And so but you worked in that field for years? Yeah.
Well, I taught. I've been a teacher for a really long time, but in grad school I worked at a particle accelerator in
Wow.
Virginia
Yeah.
for a couple of summers. I worked at NASA as like a research flunky for the summer. It was like a
Wow.
thing they
Yeah.
did with local teachers, right? So
Yeah.
they just pay us for the summer to come in and do. I did a couple of research projects, um,
Wow.
and then and I just there was something else at I feel like I did something else at NASA before that, but oh,
Yeah.
I did something. I did some research stuff with different universities here when I was in college and all that kind of stuff. I spent a lot of my life teaching, and and then when I wasn't teaching, I was doing research.
Good.
I have papers published,
Yeah.
but I won't exactly tell you where they are.
Yeah. No,
But
fair enough.
but
Fair enough.
I yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you feel like being sort of like a scientist and that? How do you feel about the whole Trump thing, like sort of like anti-science,
How
you
much
know?
time do you have?
Oh, well, I mean, it's just great.
Yeah.
Like when you hear him talk about climate change or it's a Chinese hoax and
Yeah.
and
Oh my God.
magnets.
Yeah.
Remember, I don't know if you remember, he said that magnets die when they touch water. Yeah, he
Yeah.
said that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That kind of stuff hurts my brain. Oh, so the thing I always get really upset about, right? So
Yeah,
you guys in Australia have cell phones.
yeah,
If you drop your phone in a puddle of water, phone dies,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So if a boat goes under the water that is run by a battery, that is a
yeah.
direct current battery, the battery is pretty much just going to die when it hits the water
Right. Yeah,
because there's no current source. It's just being spread out everywhere. There's no way a boat is going to electrocute you. And
yeah, yeah,
that whole thing, it was just that, and having to hear it, he just kept repeating it
yeah,
over and
yeah,
over
yeah,
again. And I'm
yeah,
sure that people believe it.
yeah,
Um, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work. If they want to try it, that would be that's up to them. But
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think all
I
you would
know.
do is wind up getting you'd get pulled under by the boat and get eaten by the shark anyway.
Shocked. I know. He does just sort of talk off the top of his head. He just sort of
Oh yeah.
rambles when he's doing those rallies. So,
Hmm.
um, but just even like the climate change thing is just because he must be
Yeah.
surrounded. He must be surrounded by some intelligent people. You would think. Do you know what I mean? Like
Well,
he must be like people. He must have some connection to. I don't mean like the people he's hired around himself, like, the sort of yes men. I mean, he must
yeah.
be coming into contact with some people at NASA or people like that. Do you know what I mean? Or even Elon
I
Musk.
don't think he talks to those people. So
Yeah, you don't think he does at all? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
no, no.
yeah,
So okay. So I don't know. I'm jealous of whatever government Europe Australia has.
yeah,
Because I know it's better than ours. Um,
yeah,
but but like he doesn't all he does is sit on the phone all the time
yeah,
and
yeah.
like and run out ideas, and then all of his buddies are the
Yeah,
ones who are dealing with all the other people, and they're just pretty much doing whatever he tells them to do. The FEMA guy that he just
yeah,
replaced the first FEMA guy
yeah,
because he made the mistake of saying that FEMA needed money.
yeah,
Um, and then the next guy doesn't even know there's a hurricane season.
yeah.
That's
I
like
know.
the main
Yeah, I
thing.
saw that one. I read
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah. Only,
and like for a
yeah,
person who lives in a place where hurricanes are, I've
yeah,
lived through hurricanes daily, monthly, yearly, my
yeah,
entire life, too many to count.
yeah,
Um, it's maddening. Especially
yeah.
because most of the people around here thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And I guess, like, would you say that you're surrounded by a lot of MAGA voters? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in the place where, like, in the particular city where I am in,
Mm,
yes. In the general state, it's definitely majority. In the
yeah,
region, yeah, I live in the south of the southern part of the United States.
yeah,
Where the old Confederacy that
yeah,
lasted 5 years. Um, that place I live, and so yeah, there's definitely a lot of it around. My dad was a Trump guy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. I've got freaking Trump coins. He passed away like a year or so ago.
Sorry to hear
Um,
that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but like I was gonna get rid of them before the election, and
yeah,
then I just
yeah,
didn't do it. I was basically just gonna sell them off and give all the money to Biden. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
then
yeah,
but then like I didn't do it, and then he won. And so
yeah,
now I'm holding on to it because now it's like Hitler memorabilia. Someday
yeah,
some idiot's gonna pay way too much money for it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and Dad will have done his job then. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. Like yeah, it's everywhere.
it,
Most
so,
of the people that I am close with are
mm,
not, just because I couldn't really deal with people like that all the time. But
yeah,
family you kind of get stuck with.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you think they ever, like, when you have family and they're sort of like pro Trump or something, do any of them sort of malleable? Do you think any of them could ever change their minds?
So
If,
okay,
yeah,
so my dad, like when COVID happened,
yeah,
right, and he made the big stink about the vaccine.
mm,
Right? Me and my wife told my dad,
yeah,
"You get a shot or you don't see your grandkids,"
yeah, yeah,
and that changed his mind.
yeah, yeah,
He did it. Now he only did it once.
yeah,
He didn't do anything after that, and and but he did it. But there was lots of other stuff that I went back and forth with him about.
yeah.
That was not as convincing. So I don't think he. I think he just the grandkids were that was a card that I could use that
Like a
I
cool,
could
yeah.
use all the time.
It's quite interesting, the whole vaccine and Trump thing, because the vaccines were
Insane.
made under Trump,
Yeah,
Operation Warp Speed, and yet
yeah.
even though he does at sometimes he does try to take credit for it. I've seen
Almost
him.
never.
No, no,
Yeah,
I have seen him, like, I've seen him interviewed a couple of times. It was later, right,
yeah,
where he actually said, "Oh, I'm not given enough credit for the vaccines." There was a period of
yeah.
time there. It happened for a couple of months after, I think it was, um, after he got kicked out of office, and he was
Mhm.
doing a tour with Bill O'Reilly. Remember Bill O'Reilly from Fox News?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I
and Bill
remember him.
O'Reilly was a big he was actually pro-vaccine, and, so they were going around the country together, and at one stage, they were both being pro-vaccine on stage talking to people, and there's a famous video, or infamous video going around where they start getting
Mhm.
booed, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
they both start getting booed, right? And Trump was
Mhm.
always saying it like this. Trump was always saying, "Look, look, look, I got the vaccine. It's a good vaccine, but I know you guys love your freedom, so I'm not going to go on about it." So
Yeah,
that's how he kind of said it, right? And he didn't say it
yeah.
very often. And I know that when during COVID, when the media, or maybe it was the government, so they got all the politicians together beforehand to say that, we got vaccinated, he
Yeah,
refused to take part in that. Um,
yeah.
so there's always been like, mostly he just stays quiet about it, but at the
Mhm.
same time, he has tried to, and he knows his base
Yeah,
doesn't like it. His
yeah,
base hates it, right? So when I'm
yeah.
on Twitter, one of the things that I love to do on Twitter, just,
Mhm.
is they'll go, "Oh, how many boosts?" They always say, "How many boosters did you get?" That's their big thing.
Yeah,
Like, they're like, "Oh," and I go, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, they were made under Trump." "Oh, no, it wasn't. It was Giuliani. Giuliani made him do it." I was like,
yeah,
"Okay."
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
So the vaccine stuff, right? So
yeah,
that is one of the craziest things to me.
yeah.
It started so that all the vaccine hesitancy stuff, all that stuff existed before Trump.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yeah,
he just kind of moved into it, and like he just grabbed up those people who were already there.
mm,
Were essentially Trump people too, and
yeah,
so he just kind of moved that way. I will say to you that there are essentially two things that I approved of that Trump did in his first term,
yeah,
and the vaccine was one of them.
yeah. I agree.
That was impressive. Like
Yeah, I agree.
from a scientist perspective, and Fauci should get credit for that too, because
Yeah,
Fauci had that ready from SARS from like a decade and a half before that,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
SARS and MERS, whenever they were in the Middle East and
yeah,
Asia, they
yeah,
picked those diseases up, figured out a way to make a vaccine for it. It just never blew up. That's why
yeah,
they were able to do it so quick.
yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah,
yeah, and so like if that was me, that would be the thing I would be saying. Look at what I did, but
yeah,
he won't touch it because they're terrified of it. And
yeah,
now there's measles everywhere.
yeah,
Um, for
yeah,
exactly the same reason. The other thing he did good was he changed the way that musicians get paid from Spotify or something like that. But
Oh,
that was like a Kanye
I didn't
West
know
thing, I
that.
think.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and
Yeah.
it was like, it's again something he never talks about because I don't think he understood exactly what he did, and I don't remember what it
It
was.
was
It made it
probably
better
someone
for
else.
plays.
It was probably like Kid Rock or somebody who
Yeah, I think
offered
it
to
was
do it.
Kanye West. I think it was
Oh,
Kanye
Kanye
West who
West.
talked to him.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah,
knew it was going to be like a right wing musician who probably said, "Hey, let's do that." He just went, "I don't really
yeah,
understand it, but yeah, sure, let's do it." Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, he just
yeah,
went along with it, and it was good. I think Kid Rock actually was there too, but that's the only that would make sense anyway.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, look, you probably. I mean, it's interesting the vaccine, the whole Trump thing, because I've always found it like interesting because Trump, because obviously Australia was quite famous during the whole COVID period. You had Joe Rogan saying, we're all in lockdown, all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that we were under an authoritarian government, all that stuff. Um,
Oh yes,
it was interesting that what I
you
noticed
guys
in
did it
Australia,
right.
because we get a lot of we had a little. I mean, people don't realize that a lot of things that happen in America happens in Australia as well. So
Yeah,
Joe Rogan is big here, just as big as he is in America. So
yeah, for no
all
reason.
that stuff comes to Australia. So Trump really, and on my Facebook page, I started to notice during COVID is a lot of because I grew up in the inner city of Sydney, right? I'm in Brisbane, but I grew
Yeah,
up so really sort of like, I don't know, like a lot of sort of people who like yoga and all that stuff, right?
yeah.
um,
Okay, okay.
so I was around a lot of those people with alternative therapies and all that, and I wouldn't call them hippies, but they're like they're into that alternative stuff, more
Mm,
like sort of fashionable inner city sort of alternative stuff,
yeah.
and they all gravitated towards Trump. So many of that
Wow.
is he got those people from that used to maybe vote left wing, right?
Yeah,
And he got them voting that way because they were always suspicious of modern medicine.
yeah,
Um, there's a connection between, for example, hippies and Trump. You know what I mean? A lot of
yeah,
those,
yeah,
even if you look at some of the musicians who follow him, like people like, some of those were old school, they were like hippie type people. Like Kid Rock was kind of alternative in his early days and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he's picked up a lot of that anti-science, like I remember in
Kid
Sydney
Rock.
music. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, Kid Rock. I just want to bust on Kid Rock. Kid Rock,
Yeah.
has basically only got popular because he used other people's music and rewrote stuff over it.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
And like he was
Yeah.
his like first album in the '90s
Yeah.
was cool. I saw Kid Rock in the '90s. It
Yeah.
was a Family Values tour or something like that. But
Yeah.
that was the only time, and I wasn't there to see him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But since then, it's just now he's just as I wouldn't know a Kid Rock song from the past
No,
30 years
I,
if it
I've never been a big fan. I saw some of his stuff
yeah.
from the '90s and stuff, but that's about it. Like, I have no idea what he does these days. I don't think
It
a
was
lot of people.
different when it first came out as a
Yeah,
different thing, but like it did not last.
no,
Every
no,
everybody else is just like, yeah, that was one decent song.
yeah. Well, he doesn't really have a great music, like people around him. Like Kanye West is like a full on Nazi. You've got
Yeah, yeah.
the other celebrities like Roseanne Barr. She's like literally crazy. Like
God,
it says
yeah.
it says a lot about
Yeah.
the celebrities he gets. They're not
Mhm.
they're not exactly like the most sane people in the world. So,
Yeah,
um,
well, yeah,
yeah,
no, I don't I Kanye West doesn't make any sense. But I will tell you this, I have no idea what a Kanye West song I've never heard a Kanye West song.
oh
Couldn't
really?
name one. Yeah, it is one of those
Yeah, I
I
don't mind a
managed
little
to
bit of
I'm a
yeah.
what's that?
I don't mind a little bit of rap here and there.
Oh,
I have a very eclectic music taste, so I can
yeah.
listen to jazz one day and I can listen to rap another day.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
rap music just fine. I
yeah,
just don't care like I don't care about Kanye West music. I don't know whatever he's done.
yeah, yeah,
I'm sure it's a lot of stuff. I've probably heard it, but
yeah,
like, if yeah, I just like uh so I don't know any Taylor Swift songs, not off the top of my
yeah,
head. But
yeah,
but
yeah,
at least she's a decent person. Um
yeah, yeah,
uh
yeah, and I mean, like the whole Taylor Swift thing's also just sort of brings out the whole the teenage toddler, like
oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
Trump, where it's just like I hate her, and I never really know how much of it is genuine. and how much of
Yeah.
it he's just trying to divert attention because some bad economic news came that day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's
it's
trying
it's
to like,
all
yeah,
it's all diverting attention. Like
yeah,
none of it is real.
yeah,
You can if I see he said something crazy, I'm like, what else happened? Because there's
yeah. That
something else that
I
I'm
think the
not
same
supposed to be
thing.
looking at.
And I generally look for the economy, because
Yes. Yeah.
the last time, because he knows that most people don't care. In my opinion, most people in America, not everyone, but I'm saying like the people how he got voted in is a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't care about what his personality was like,
Yeah.
or they didn't really care enough that he was going to court every day because a lot of people don't follow news every day like you and I do. They're like
Yeah.
watching it on. It's the same in Australia because since COVID, you've got TikTok, streaming services. There's so many things like
Yeah.
to do besides watch news every day. So when I was watching him in court every day last year, I was thinking, "Oh God, there's no way he's going to make it." And then I noticed his ratings started going up. I'm thinking
Hmm.
they're buying into it's a witch hunt. Every time they
Yeah.
see him in court, they think it's a witch hunt. So
Yeah.
because they're not following the court cases, they're not looking at that Jack Smith, indictments and going, "Oh, section that." They don't know anything about that. They just know he's
And
Trump is saying
they
I'm being
yeah.
targeted, and and this guy's in court. Why are they stopping him from running? Just let him run. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
could sort of see
Yeah.
from their point of view what was happening, what the way they're thinking, and I think from our point of view, because we're so in touch with politics and that, we're just thinking, how is this possible? But we're not putting ourselves in the shoes of someone who's not watching it every day. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the one thing that gets Trump is the economy, because I think he won because of inflation overwhelmingly, and
Yeah.
I think when you're the incumbent, you get blamed for everything, and nothing has
Yeah.
really gone backwards. So
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
people who aren't paying attention are now going to be blaming Trump, and he can't get away with that. Yeah, yeah,
I would tell you he won because of the electoral college and the fact that it's a
yeah, yeah,
travesty of math.
yeah,
Because that just that part of it makes no. I mean, I guess he got more votes this time.
yeah,
But I mean, if if you want to talk about that, let's go back to 2016 then.
yeah.
Um, because Hillary's got to have a conversation. Um,
Yeah, the popular vote.
like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, which is the sensible way to do things. Um,
yeah, yeah,
you're not wrong about the inflation and stuff like that. And like
yeah,
people in general were all unsettled, but a lot of it was because of Trump.
yeah,
So he has been able to, because of Fox News and some of the other things like
mm,
Elon Musk and X, he's been
yeah,
able to basically say whatever he wants and then everybody copies it
yeah,
instead of saying that no, that's wrong, or
yeah,
and anytime anybody calls him on it, well then, you're just not
yeah,
you're wrong. Like
yeah, that's
it's
right.
a
Yeah,
so once one and so those people who his ratings were going up in because he was talking about all the court stuff and
yeah,
saying, well, they're persecuting me. And meanwhile, the judges and stuff wouldn't stop him from talking. The Supreme Court even though he led an insurrection, they let him run.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
all this stuff that they could have stopped him at any point
yeah,
because his behavior is unacceptable.
yeah,
But no, if any other person had done that, it would have been
uh,
over. But it's
yeah,
because he had that mouthpiece and he
yeah,
just kept being able to go. If
yeah,
um if
yeah,
Fox News switches off of him and switches to Elon now because they're fighting,
yeah,
he's going to be in big trouble because he
yeah,
will lose a big chunk of his mouthpiece.
yeah.
And he has too much shit coming out of his mouth for us to not be all covered in it. Like it's
Yeah, it's true.
yeah,
I agree, and I think I've always thought that in the post-COVID world where it's all about trying to get eyeballs and people aren't paying attention and stuff. I think being
yeah,
incumbent in the incumbent is actually a bit toxic these days. In
yeah.
2024, I think there was no year like it in the past where the only country, I think it was the only country that didn't get kicked out was Mexico, but
Oh,
so yeah. So I think a lot of that, I think Trump is very good. I've always thought Trump is very good as the opposition leader, but he's not
he
very good
is.
as the incumbent because suddenly there's no Biden to talk about. There's no
Yeah,
Kamala to talk about. It's all
yep,
about him. And he can't blame because he's, he was really good at like, someone, a plane, one engine would go off. That's Biden's fault.
yeah,
He would
yeah,
commentate every day about every single thing like it was all Biden's fault. He can't do
yeah.
that now. So that
Well,
superpower that he had is gone.
he can.
He
It's less
can, but I don't think
believable.
it's
He
effective.
still tries.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think it's
yeah,
effective though. Yeah, yeah,
No, no, it's not. It does not have the same effect
yeah,
because it's. But you're right. Like he spent a lot. His entire thing was opposition. It didn't matter,
yeah,
and this has been true since the Obama days
yeah,
of like 2010. Is
yeah,
that like it's always been not about what's best for everybody or what's best for the country.
yeah,
It's about stopping the Democrats or whoever it is
yeah,
from just doing something that would make anything better.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
you know, and just the Supreme Court pick. You know, Merrick Garland should have been on the Supreme Court, not the should have never been the Attorney General.
yeah,
Um, uh, and he should have arrested those people that day. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that they've gotten passes on
yeah,
because you know they handle them with kid gloves. When it's it's the real world, not just because the brains don't work like adults all the time
yeah,
doesn't mean that they shouldn't be treated like adults all the time. We do
yeah,
that with, kids who do things that adults do.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I remember like do you remember when Obama was in power and there was a couple of people who got Ebola in Africa, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
he flew them into a place. It was like a hospital, or it was a designated place. It was done with people with hazmat suits, and also Ebola. They weren't allowed to just roam around America, and
Yeah.
Ebola is not like COVID. It's not as
No.
contagious. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so they put in all this effort. It never spread anywhere. There was no like spread, but I remember Trump being on Fox News going, "Obama should resign. He should
Yeah.
resign." Because of that, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it's just that's his personality. Though he just
Hmm.
looks at what someone else is doing, and then when COVID happened and there's thousands of cases, he's like, well, it's not my fault. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
it's a complete opposite. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. He always points it at somebody else.
yeah,
I remember the Ebola thing. There was a few people in Texas who got Ebola who
yeah,
were in a hospital. They worked in a hospital, something like that. And there was a worry for like a week or so
yeah,
that it could have spread.
yeah,
And like I remember we put up signs and stuff for
yeah,
like just at the place where I was working. I was just about like the spread of Ebola, and I left it up there for
yes,
probably until I left that job because of COVID. Um,
yeah.
but like it was, yeah, Ebola it's not gonna it's you can't spread it by coughing on each other. You get a
No, that's it. Yeah,
mixed blood and all sorts of nasty stuff. But
yeah,
it was a huge thing then.
yeah,
And then when COVID was happening in like December of 2019,
yeah,
and on the news you see people in China have this virus, blah blah blah.
yeah,
And then like February comes and he's like, "Oh, nothing's gonna happen." I was like, "What are you talking about?
yeah,
Nothing's gonna happen? It's already happening." Like, how many people have been on a plane from China to here since then? How many people have come from anywhere? And
exactly.
there was no avoiding it at that point.
No,
I and so like when we were it was right before spring break at the time.
yeah,
We went on spring break and I told my wife I'm not going back to work, and I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah,
Um, I don't know if I ever stepped foot in the building again. Maybe I did once or twice later on.
yeah,
But yeah, it was. What did you guys do? So like, I know y'all did different stuff, but why did y'all get so much
yeah.
trouble? The lockdown is a good idea. Like, I
Yeah,
never
look,
understood that.
I think I've thought about this a lot because we copped a lot of criticism, especially from like sort of that Joe Rogan sort of side of things, because he was obsessed with us. He was like tweeting about us every day,
Yeah.
showing videos, all that sort of stuff. Um, I think the I think what we did probably wouldn't have been as effective in America, and the reason is because we're
Hmm.
an island. Um,
Okay.
and we could control who came into the country. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so we actually, with the original strain, the alpha, it was nowhere
Mhm.
near as contagious as Omicron is at the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we actually, and people don't. It's hard for people to believe in like America and Europe and stuff where they didn't really they didn't stop it. We at
Yeah.
one stage completely stopped all transmission. Yeah. We had
Wow. Okay.
and so what was happening is the people who were coming back into Australia, they would go
Uh,
into quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel
mm,
or something like that. It was like a five-star
yeah.
hotel, but if you listen to
Yeah.
Joe
Yeah.
Rogan, it was like an internment camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was
It's
like a
a free
five-star
hotel.
hotel. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they called it. They called it was like the Nazi internment camp or something. Um, but the thing
That's
that people
insane.
don't understand is that there was an agreement done between the government and the people from the start. The government never said this is going to be forever. Do you know what I mean? The government
Yeah.
basically said, look, we're working on vaccines. America's working on vaccines. If we get a vaccine in the next 6, 7, 8 months, because we'll sort of know something's going to come, right?
Yeah.
Everybody who can get vaccinated should have a chance to get vaccinated. And then after then, we're going to have to open up, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was never about this is what life is going to be like the rest of our life. It was always a
Yeah.
social contract, right? Like
Yeah.
if you listen to
Yeah.
people like Joe Rogan, it was like once you have lockdowns, they never stop, and this and that. The government's over. What nothing that
Yeah.
existed back then exists now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it was just and the idea that this is the other thing that I feel like the right wing lie about, or this sort of libertarian, is they sort of say that certain governments, I'm sure China maybe it's like that, but like Western governments, they loved COVID because they got all this power. I can tell you, the prime minister at our time was a conservative, right? And he didn't love it. In fact, he resigned afterwards because he was so stressed by the whole situation, right? Because
Yeah.
they had to get up every single day and do like today there's 10 cases, today there's this case. You know what I mean? Every
Mhm.
single day. Normally, you wouldn't hear from them for a week or two. So suddenly their whole 24/7 life was now about COVID. They had
Yeah.
no holidays, no nothing. It was like
Yeah.
so many of those people burnt out and left politics. They weren't sitting
Mhm.
there going, "This is great." None of them were sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Um.
So yeah,
So did y'all? So I know that you guys. Okay, I don't know enough about Australian history. I'll tell you that right now,
yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
don't know. I know the country itself is what? What's the you know, 200, 300, 400 years?
Yeah, yeah, it's about
1600s.
just over 200 years. Yeah, when
Was
England.
it around in 1666?
Well, no, it wasn't because we
Okay.
were no, because it was the indigenous population was living here. Obviously,
Okay.
the indigenous population's been living here for 50, 60,000 years. It's one of the oldest
Okay.
populations. Yeah, so
Okay.
they're called the Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
So there's
I'm
obviously
trying to figure out if the island idea made me just think of something like
yeah.
I was thinking of the Black Plague, but
Ah,
even the Spanish flu. I feel like it was something that Australia had done before. Like I feel like they
um,
had used a similar mechanism to block out like something like the flu or something like that in
yeah,
the 1900s.
I don't remember the.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. There probably would have been some things, but I don't remember it like being as big as like what happened during COVID. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, some people
To look at that.
now in hindsight go, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have done this. But you can't
Yeah,
have you can't. No one's going to get everything right during, when everything's
yeah.
dynamic and changing all the time. Um, but the problem with that conversation is if you say, oh, look, maybe they shouldn't have closed this particular place because, like, for example, one of the things that they closed down was kids going to parks and playing on swings. Now, in
Mhm.
hindsight,
Yeah,
that probably was a bad idea,
yeah,
because
yeah.
being outside was actually safer. But
Yes,
they
yeah,
didn't know that back then. But
yeah,
people will go, if you say that, they'll go, oh, see, I told you we were right. It's like
yeah,
now they branched out to you were wrong about everything. You can't have a sensible, nuanced conversation with MAGA. Like that's why it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
oh, the mask thing, right? So
yeah,
Trump just refused to wear a mask because it ruins his makeup.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but like
yeah,
all you've got to do, like when they're like masks don't stop anything. Put one on and spit on try to spit on somebody. It doesn't
yeah,
work,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's the whole point.
yeah,
That's why it's there, so you can't spit on somebody else.
yeah,
So like, of course it's working. If you go and watch like old, I don't know, I have no idea, how long you've been around, but like
yeah,
in the 90s there was a mini series of a Stephen King show called The Stand. They redid it in like
yeah.
the
I remember that.
2020.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
remember
with
that.
Gary
Yeah,
Sinise and
yeah, yeah,
Molly Ringwald. Really, really, it's like one of my favorite things to watch. And I
yeah,
read the book back then. Anyway,
yeah,
if you go watch that at the very beginning of it, and when they're doing the super flu commercials, and like they're talking, and people are wearing masks, right?
yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
it was obvious that it's right there. Like every government, all the people at the CDC and the why would
yeah,
like they just put it in the movie because it looked fancy, or they like
yeah,
of course it works.
yeah.
Like
No,
that, I
no.
never understood that. And like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course it's better. But it's
Yeah.
that
I
part,
know
and
if you
that
go into
made
a
this whole
hospital,
country 1,000 times worse.
yeah, if you go into a hospital, the doctors and nurses are wearing masks. I mean, if it didn't work, they wouldn't be bothered to do it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Like they would just be, spitting all up in you during surgery, all the infections, they could
yeah.
come up with.
Well, what I
Uh,
found interesting is a lot of those people in the MAGA world, they clung to this. I don't know if you remember, there was like a study done, and the
uh,
studies that masks didn't work during COVID, but
yeah,
that was the headline. But what they, like a lot of MAGA and Joe Rogan type people, they never read the actual study itself. So I actually did.
exactly.
And the
Yeah.
actual study said it didn't work in the community, right? But it worked in a hospital setting. And what they were saying is basically COVID is so contagious that
Mhm.
you have to be wearing a mask 24/7. So if you go to work if you go on a train and you wear a mask, but then you go home and you've got like 10 people in the family, then you don't wear a mask, then at some stage you're going to get it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
people are not wearing masks 24/7 in the
Yeah. It
community.
can.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
therefore the effectiveness depended on that individual person, how they
Yeah.
did it. And a lot of people
Yeah.
happen in Australia, they would wear the mask under their chins,
Yeah.
or they would wear like cloth masks weren't as good as a sort of N95, all that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so, it was just that the community, basically the study was saying the community didn't know how to wear masks properly, and the community wasn't wearing them on a regular basis. Therefore, it had a
Yeah.
minimum effect, right? But if you're an individual who wants to really look after your health and you wore a mask properly, and maybe you're living with one other person or whatever, then it didn't have a big impact. But it's
Mhm.
just that the majority of people weren't doing that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
have
yeah.
you had COVID?
I've had it like twice. Yeah.
I've never had it.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know how. My wife got it once.
yeah,
Um, I've gotten vaccinated a whole bunch of times.
yeah.
I'm worried they're going to try to experiment on me. But I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
there are other people.
Well,
But it was. I'm pretty sure I've kept up with boosters and stuff. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that's what it is. But also,
yeah,
my dad, who only got that one vaccine, he never got COVID. My son's never had it either.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't know if that's a thing. It's just
yeah,
a observation. But
yeah.
no,
I mean,
I was curious just because like
yeah,
for all them like when you were talking about the mask and stuff, you're right. Like
yeah,
if people did not know how to wear them, like it
yeah,
was it was, and if they did, or they just didn't want to wear them right. And then yeah,
yeah,
they would you'd have to if you take them off when you go home, you're susceptible to everybody that's in your home.
yeah,
And if
exactly.
any of
Yeah,
those people didn't wear their mask right or anything like that, and
yeah,
COVID's so it floats in the air easily.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
not like measles though,
No,
which floats in the air for stays around forever, and you can go
yeah,
in the room 2 hours after somebody was there,
yeah,
and get measles.
yeah,
You don't have to be in the same room with the person who's sick. COVID, you kind of have
yeah,
to be in the room with them while they're sick to catch it.
yeah, exactly.
Measles,
Yeah.
you just have to show up later.
Yeah, yeah, I know, and that must be crazy for you as a sort of a scientist to see someone like RFK Jr.
Oh,
like
oh
get
God.
such a prominent role in the. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, and that sort of goes
yeah.
back to what I was saying before about that old hippie. You know that whole old hippie sort of.
Mm,
And
yeah, yeah,
RFK
yeah.
Jr. represents that old hippie people. You know what I
He
mean?
does. He does.
Raw milk. All that sort
Hmm.
of stuff. Nature.
Yeah,
You can't trust science. Yeah,
my first wife's dad.
yeah,
So I guess my ex father-in-law
yeah,
was a hippie like that. He lived like out in the woods somewhere.
yeah,
Um, but he did all that kind of raw milk stuff. No, no. There's a reason why we pasteurize milk. It's because
yeah,
then it won't give you all this bacteria. I don't. That's the biology question I can't answer, but it will kill you and make you very sick.
yeah,
Um, E. coli, things like that. Uh, and like there's reasons why you do those things, and it's
yeah.
because it won't give you salmonella, right? It
Yes.
won't
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
won't give you trichinosis or whatever it is when you get from eating pork.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's a it's crazy, it's
yeah,
crazy, and
yeah,
and all of the science is there. It's just he thinks he knows better, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah,
and then says, "Don't take my advice." Well, okay.
yeah,
Um, None of us want to take your advice anyway.
yeah. No,
Um,
no, he does say don't take my advice, but at the same time, he wants to do all these he wants to do more studies on
He
vaccines.
was,
That's the thing. Like,
yeah,
that's the thing. The
yeah,
only way to get around. He goes, I'm not against vaccines. I'm just for vaccine safety. And we just,
yeah,
but his whole thing, I think, is I think he'd love to go, let's pause the vaccines while we do more safety checks. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then that
yeah.
keeps going until he finds the
So
results that he wants. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, my kids have autism, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's like it's directly relatable to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why like we could have a whole other conversation about RFK.
Yeah.
But maybe my experience isn't everybody's experience. In fact, I know with kids with autism, no, none of the kids are ever the same.
Yeah.
They're always just a little bit different. Um,
Yeah.
but in my experience, right, my kids have had autism from the moment they were born.
Yeah.
It was never a time when the vaccine kicked it in or
Yeah.
something like that, right? Like, and I can identify things directly. It would take a minute to kind of explain it without pictures, like the
Yeah.
way my kids like flap their hands or bend around, that they still do to this day. That's a
Yeah.
thing, and it was there from the moment they were born.
Yeah.
How they progressed with it was different and things like that, and it does become recognizable at the same time that kids would get vaccines,
Yeah.
but every single one of us got those vaccines in the
Yeah.
80s. That's why the disease was gone for a while and
Yeah.
nobody's hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not nobody, but like it's not, it's if the vaccines were causing the problem, we would have known already because they already looked for that. One guy made up data and they've ran with that forever.
Yeah. Andrew
Every other
Wakefield.
study after that was the opposite. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's his name?
I actually wrote about that on Substack. It was Andrew Wakefield who
Yeah, yeah,
who
that
did the
guy.
study
Yeah,
in the UK, who's now become like a bit of a celebrity amongst the sort of alternative American
yeah.
people. And
He
he's
just made it
actually,
up.
yeah, and actually when Trump got elected in 2016, um uh Andrew Wakefield was in America and he said he's one of our guys. So yeah,
Oh, okay. Oh,
that
okay.
yeah, that was before RFK Jr. joined Trump.
Yeah.
So Trump already had. I don't think Trump was as convinced as RFK Jr. was, but he already had some of those views in his
Yeah.
head. Yeah, yeah. But at the
Y
same time, I think Trump would be more cautious because he doesn't want to see. He doesn't want the. He might think, oh, RFK Jr. is correct, but I don't think he's 100% convinced on it. And so I don't think if you start seeing dead bodies of children, like on a massive
yeah.
scale, he would like,
Yeah.
he
Well,
cares enough about his own,
that's the yeah,
yeah,
that's the terrible thing. Like, the measles
yeah,
is only it'll kill enough people where it won't be, like a COVID kind of thing. But
yeah,
non-zero is too many, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And I think, and I feel like this from the time when he started it during the campaign with RFK uh, Junior, he does. Trump does not want to give a crap about healthcare policy. I
no,
mean, I don't know if you watched the debate, but I've got concepts of a plan. Yes,
yeah,
concepts of a
I saw
plan
that.
was to hire RFK, who knows jack shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, like he just doesn't even want to bother with it because he just
yeah,
doesn't care anyway. And so he just
yeah,
stuck this guy in charge of it.
yeah,
And RFK Jr. has no idea what he is doing. And
no,
like they made up a paper and made up references and like,
yeah,
what? Who does that?
I
Like,
know.
I get it. I know every single scientist that would get fired for doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You don't do that. That's not okay.
no,
Um,
no,
and but not if your last name's Kennedy, you know,
yeah,
I guess it's fine, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. He kind of like I kind of think Trump. Do you remember the MAGA base used to have this like QAnon a fantasy of they thought John F. Kennedy was alive, was going to come back, and was going to be
yeah, JFK Jr. Yeah,
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 JFK Jr. That's right. He was going to come back.
yeah,
He never
yeah. Oh my
died in the
God.
plane crash, and it was going to be. So I kind of feel like, and Trump was very locked. He was very involved with that QAnon stuff because he was constantly like reposting their stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he definitely knew about it. So I think in his head also, he probably agrees with him because of the whole anti-established, anti-science thing. But I think he saw him as a political tool to get a lot of
absolutely.
Democrats to
Yeah,
come and vote for him as well. And it's like, and he loves that Kennedy name. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Because he has said in the past one of his favorite presidents is John F. Kennedy. So
yeah.
and now it's suddenly Trump, Kennedy. It was like, and suddenly JD Vance disappeared
Uh,
for a while. And it was just those two together all the time. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think there's a bit of that as well. Yeah,
Oh, I think I lost you for a second. That
yeah,
might have been like some kind of weird delay.
yeah, yeah. Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yeah, it's just saying my internet's unstable. It's me.
yeah.
I think it's back.
It's
Um,
back. Okay, good. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yes. Yeah. So basically, what else do you what else about US politics sort of are you really hating at the moment? Besides, what's the
well,
worst thing you hate about Trump? Yeah.
oh my goodness. No,
Yeah.
well, so I'm just tired of Trump. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have any good ideas or any good
Yeah.
nothing. And this is a Southern thing, maybe I guess.
Yeah.
But like when I was raised by my grandmother, she said, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say
Yeah.
anything at all, right? And
Yeah.
if that's the case about Trump, he should just never speak again. And
Yeah.
that would make me happy. It's
Yeah.
my biggest issue is the fact that they can just lie about whatever they want
Yeah.
anywhere, and the lies don't matter anymore, and the
Mm.
lies have to be treated like they're real,
Yeah.
because there's a big difference between things that are provably false and opinions,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that bugs me.
Yeah.
um
That sort of believe that it's almost like they don't believe in objective truth. It's
it's
everything is
objective reality, it's just different
yeah,
for them.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
everything is
um
like subjective, it's like, well, that's what you believe. But and there was a bit of that relativism back in. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s when I was at
yeah.
uni in the early 90s, sort of
Mhm.
mid 90s sort of thing. I know a lot of people who were in that sort of group. They were like, if you believe Coca Cola cures cancer, then that's your truth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There was a
yeah,
bit of that back then. I feel like that's kind of gone into the MAGA movement. Where
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, you know, if you thought about the most low grade music is the same as Beethoven. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what your favorite thing. You know what I mean?
yes,
You
yeah,
can't objectively say one music is better than the other. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because every observation, in that case is subjective. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're right. Like there was a bit of that in the '90s,
yeah,
in some respects, in the way that people were about the '90s. The '90s was different though because like you we all had different stuff, and we
yeah,
all didn't know about it,
yeah,
right? Like so, if I couldn't share a picture of my dinner with you,
yeah,
um, you know, we couldn't
yeah,
have this conversation unless
yeah,
I called 1,000 phone numbers to
yeah,
reach that would have been an interesting time delay, just on the phone and speaking.
yeah,
Um, but that's I think in some ways, and like I've been writing about this on my Substack, but in some ways that's good because it makes us individuals, right? It makes us
yeah,
different,
yeah,
and different people have different ideas and come up with different things. And if everything's the same thing, then how do you ever get your way out of a problem, right? Because you'll always
yeah,
just have the same problem. And
yeah,
so you need new ideas. You need, and that's the problem with AI and all sorts of other stuff too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I agree. Yeah, and also I feel like back in the 90s when you had, I think a lot of people. I know I had one friend or something in the friendship group who was into conspiracy theories. There was
oh
always
yeah,
like
yeah,
there was one. But now
mhm,
that one is like half the people. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's now it was, that one friend everyone they'd come to dinner and they'd say something, even Alex Jones was kind of a little bit known back then.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, did you guys know about this and that? And then we'd be like nodding our head and then he'd leave and we'd go, whew, he's
That's
a bit
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
now that's our president. That's your president.
yeah,
And
yeah. No,
that's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
big chunk of America, like, or even Australia, like as I said during COVID, the amount of people that I thought were normal, and then suddenly
yeah,
we're posting this stuff about, you know, just crazy
yeah,
vaccine stuff or whatever conspiracy things, and I was like, oh my god, I can't look at that person the same. I had to mute
yeah,
them because I kind of lost respect for him in some ways,
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but
Oh,
they were
so
like normal centre left people beforehand, or yeah, it was
yeah,
weird.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so I think that like sometimes when they hit those internet like essentially rabbit holes, essentially it takes
yeah,
them, then their algorithm then takes them to a place where they can't escape.
Yeah.
right? Like,
Right.
so the
Yeah.
more I reply to right wing stuff on Facebook, the more right wing stuff on Facebook I see, even if
Yeah.
I am telling them things that are not very nice.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that a lot of that might have come from just those folks, getting essentially pulled in that direction. But there,
Yeah.
like there was conspiratorial. I mean, like, um, 9/11 is not the same thing for you as it was for us, right? I don't know if
No.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure it's not like for anybody in America, it's like we can tell you exactly what we were doing on that day, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's a really influential point, I guess, in essentially like my life. But the way that that happened and then all the stuff that followed that, like
Yeah.
we were conspiratorial about that at the
Yeah.
time. We didn't know
That's
who was doing what, right?
yeah.
And they were trying to send everybody off to war, and they were talking about weapons of mass
Yeah.
destruction and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but it was conspiracies m- m- made out of evidence for things that we didn't see all of the evidence of, right? So
Yeah.
that's how,
Yeah.
when you get a conspiracy that becomes real, or
Yeah.
a conspiracy that is based on, you can have one based on reality, right? You've got a bunch of
Yeah.
evidence for something and it just looks like something different.
Yeah.
And then when you finally see all of the evidence, okay, well, no, it was just
Yeah.
the other thing, right?
Yeah.
But there are also ones born out of complete nonsense, like the
Yeah.
QAnon thing and the
QAnon. Yeah.
Pizzagate
Yeah.
thing. Like that's just making up
Yeah.
stuff
So,
and
yeah.
with no real basis in fact. And
Yeah.
and it's okay to be question things and
Oh,
to be skeptical,
absolutely. I agree.
but don't just fall
Yeah.
for anything. Like don't be gullible. Right?
No,
That's a
I actually on my account, on all my social media accounts, including Substack, my thing that I have on there is Carl. You know Carl Sagan, and he said
yeah.
it pays to keep an open mind, but not so open your brains fall out. And
Yes.
the
Yes.
reason I put that in there was because of MAGA, because I feel like they always tell everyone, "Oh, you got to be skeptical." Do you know what I mean? You have to
Yeah.
be, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but at some stage, you got to say there's
Yeah.
enough evidence. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah. It's a yeah.
not everything can be a conspiracy. And if you give someone enough evidence, but with them it's like, no, you have to go all the way. You can't trust
Yep.
if there's 100 studies, we don't trust that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like a contrarianism that's gotten a lot of people in the online world where if
Yeah.
they hear someone who's like a what they call an establishment scientist, they won't believe that. But if it's some comedian or crackpot or some
Yeah.
some scientist
Yeah.
who makes up like 0.5% of what people think,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
they will go with that person because they and I think it is a bit of a 90s thing as well. Like the anti remember in the 90s there was a bit of anti-establishment. It was like
Yeah.
George W. Bush was the establishment, you're right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Democrats were like the cool people, We didn't
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
all that stuff. And now
Yeah.
it's kind of Trump has kind of made Democrats and us into more of a like establishment, not in a bad way, but just like because we're fighting against the craziness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where if Trump didn't exist, we might be a little bit more skeptical with other stuff that they're talking about, just to some degree. You know what I mean? We might,
Yeah.
and then for a little while, and then go, actually, no, that's not real. But
Yeah.
I don't want to. I feel like if I give a little bit, they're just going to think that you know what I mean. I was wrong about everything, like
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it, it,
Yeah,
it,
so, like,
yeah,
they don't the whole MAGA folks, none of their ideas, I mean, their whole budget bill, like, none of their ideas are actually any good. If
yeah,
you could if the whole point of government is to essentially do the business for people that they shouldn't
yeah,
have to do for themselves,
yeah,
like, um and so there's no reason, to be cutting health insurance. That's the whole point. Why was it there in the first place? Why did
yeah,
you ever start paying for it if you're going to take it away? Because
yeah,
people, that's not okay.
yeah,
And so it's the same kind of thing with all of that stuff. And like in the 90s and the early 2000s, they were all about tax cuts and
yeah,
deficits and all this stuff. And right off the back of Clinton's surplus,
yeah,
for like the couple of years that he did that,
yeah,
and they were trying, and they used that as a thing. And then as soon as they realized that they could cut taxes and make themselves a bunch more money, well,
yeah,
that's all it's been from now on. And
yeah,
then it went from government doesn't belong anywhere to government can control everything, and we could do all this
yeah,
stuff and keep you from doing
yeah,
all this stuff, but you can't have any of your money back,
yeah,
and you're just gonna have to suffer.
yeah,
Uh, Too bad. We're gonna go hang out on our yacht.
yeah, yeah.
Peace. Like that's what you get.
Yeah,
And it's it's the selfish mentality of them. Like you can, if
Yeah.
when in doubt, what would the most selfish thing be? That's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
Every single time. It's always for and that's you know,
Yeah.
there's people who are okay with living like that, but
Yeah.
I was not raised that way, even
Yeah.
though my dad kind of fell into that trap.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but he was underinformed. He had a lot of strokes when he was old too, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll give him a pass.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, look,
Probably because he's dead.
look, I have family members and stuff. They're not MAGA, but they're conservative, and
Yeah,
that's why sometimes I don't hate MAGA all the time because
yeah,
because I have family members and stuff who think similar. I just
yeah,
feel like I feel some almost sorry for them more so.
yes,
Although
yeah,
at the time I'm frustrated with them and stuff, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
yeah, but
I wish they would listen to people they knew instead of people,
yeah,
on the internet or people
well,
who knew better. Like I
yeah,
was telling, I was, like, again, I don't know how old you are. You said you went to college in the 90s, which means you're a
yeah,
little bit older than me. But back
yeah,
in the day, right, if you wanted to watch the news at night,
yeah,
you had to sit around the antenna television.
yeah,
And if they were going to talk about a disease like the measles and the vaccine, right, they had 30 minutes on the news to do it. You get the one expert, the one science expert who goes on there and tells you what's right. This is
yeah,
the vaccine will help you. It's a doctor. It's somebody who knows what they're talking about. And that's the only person who ever sees the television, right?
yeah,
Because they're the only ones you have to hear from. And
yeah,
so now, when you have 24 hours and anything goes, right, you can get everybody's opinion on something, but
yeah,
still that one person's opinion is the only one that really matters because that
yeah,
one person is probably agreed with by every other person who knows what they're talking about.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that if I want to know about vaccines, I'm going to go read, Scientific American or
yeah,
Science or Nature or something like
yeah,
that. If
yeah.
I'm not going to go read Fox News. Like
No,
it's not if it's just a lack of it's an uncuriosity, right? And then
yeah,
just people just not knowing better.
yeah. Well,
Science and like learning science just in general is impossible for people.
yeah. I think it makes I've always thought this, the people that I've known who've been into conspiracies are some of the least educated people I know. Now,
Hmm.
it's not necessarily all of them. Some of them aren't, but but I find that I think is it makes them feel more important. Like they know something that no one else does. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
involved. It's almost like a church, like a community, online community where they're
yeah,
like we're the sheep, right? And
yeah,
they're behind, and they know they're seeing things in 4D and everything, and all this sort of stuff. And they have like a community online where they can make fun of like, oh, Fauci got everything wrong. They got everything
yeah,
wrong. They got and Joe Rogan got everything right. So,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
how they think. Like that, there's a huge section of people online who think Joe Rogan got everything right during COVID, and all the people, and they repeat that over and
yeah,
over and over again, and they use
yep,
that as an excuse to not believe anything the government tells them now.
yep,
Um, I think it's worse in America. I've thought about this compared to say Australia, Europe, and Scandinavia, is because we have a very different political system than you guys. America's more individualistic. Like the country itself is more and has a bigger libertarian part of it. Do you know what I mean? Where
yeah.
it's
Mhm.
like even with the guns, right? It's like
Oh my God, with the guns, yeah,
don't touch my guns. You know what I mean? Like that
yeah,
to us, that's insane. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
I don't think if and the idea. What I also find funny about this is the idea that some guy in somewhere in America has got like a handgun or a rifle. If the
yeah,
American military want us to take them out, they're not even going to be fighting it. They're going to be fighting against drones. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
they're not going to
yeah,
have any chance. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
maybe,
Do you know who
yeah.
Dirty Harry is?
Oh yeah, yeah. Those
That's
are the
all
movies,
that's all
like
that stuff
movies
is.
or something, or
Yeah, it was
yeah,
Clint Eastwood, yeah.
yeah, that's right.
My dad was in love with those Dirty Harry movies.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's a lot of I would argue that's a lot of it's kind I guess it's kind of sad, but that Charlton Heston's probably a lot of gun culture in
Yeah,
now, or at least in the early 2000s. It's kind of grown into something different now. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's that whole thing is maddening.
yeah,
I'm not a fan of it. Um,
yeah,
but I don't also, there's no reason for everybody, not everybody needs a gun.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
uh,
it's a weird thing because like in Australia, I don't know if you know, but in the 90s we had this like big thing that happened and um we basically we've never had a massive gun culture, but in 96
yeah.
there was a guy called Martin Bry
Mhm.
who he did one of the biggest killings, mass killings, I
I
think
think I,
age in the history of the world.
I
In
think I remember. Was
yeah,
that like
he
at a
had like a
park or something?
sorry.
Was it at like a park or like
Yeah,
a?
it was a place in, Tasmania. Tasmania's like an island off the
Yeah,
bottom of
yeah, yeah,
Australia, and he was
yeah,
there,
yeah,
and he went to a place called Port Arthur, and Port
yeah.
Arthur was
That's
like a
yeah,
it was like tourist place, but it was
yes,
mostly outside. It was like an old convict place where the convicts would come from England, you know what I mean?
yeah. Those
And it
different
was
buildings. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
so he
yeah.
was
That's the
able
place I
to
was thinking
shoot
of.
people from everywhere. They were exposed, and then he went
Yeah,
into a cafe in a very tiny cafe, and basically, yeah, and that,
yeah.
and at the time, the prime minister was a conservative prime minister called John Howard, and
Mhm.
he ended up serving for like 10 years, and he was really conservative, like really conservative, and he
Yeah,
basically said, "We can't have this in Australia. We're not America." Right? This is a conservative guy. He said, "So what
yeah,
are we going to do?" Is and he was getting attacked from his own side because
yeah.
it's a and
Yeah, it was
basically
really
what
unpopular back then.
it was very yeah. Well, no, it
Yeah.
was popular, but not.
Oh,
It was yeah. The gun back thing
oh,
was
well, here.
popular, but not within certain groups of his party. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
the Conservative Party is broken up into two bits. There's one bit, it's like a coalition of two parties. One is the
Okay.
National Party, which is rural country areas, and the other one
Okay.
is the Liberal Party, which is like the city areas, right? So,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah.
the countryside of it, well, like, because that's where most of the guns was. Like when I was growing
Yeah.
up, nobody had guns. I mean, there were criminals who
Yeah.
had guns, but I never
Yeah.
saw guns anyway. I've never
Oh
seen
my
a
God.
gun except
So
on
many.
someone's holster. And that's the only
Oh.
time I've ever seen a gun. So,
Oh wow. Yeah. My dad worked for the FBI when I was. I mean,
oh,
he had guns
really?
everywhere.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He was a. That was a
yeah.
long time ago. But
Yeah, well,
yeah.
yeah,
I've seen guns all my life. That's why I don't like them.
yeah, well, that's the thing, like, I don't even see them, but,
Yeah.
what he did was very courageous, and it's one of the things that I liked about him, even though everything else I'd hated about him, 'cause
Yeah.
he was like a massive fan of George W. Bush and all that stuff.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but that bit there and what we realized years later is he actually said something that was really, like, profound. He said, "This could never have been done by a centre-left government." It could
Yeah.
only have been done by centre right because the centre left government was always going to go along with everything he did because they were in agreement, right? But if
Yeah.
it was a centre left government doing it, the centre right government would have felt like it can't go with it. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was only ever going to be done by a centre right. So in America, I feel like the same thing.
That's
I feel
interesting. Yeah.
the only people who can bring this in would be like a moderate Republican. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
don't exist anymore.
No, they don't
Uh,
exist anymore. Yeah.
yeah. Those people are currently have their heads up Donald Trump's butt.
Yeah. No,
Um.
not anytime soon anyway. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 And the Democrats are scared as well of bringing it up too much as well. So yeah,
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, right now they couldn't do anything with it if they tried. Like, there's no
no,
reason to even talk about it.
yeah,
If it's just, I mean, we can't even get them to stop like stealing our data and all the other stuff that they're doing.
yeah,
But yeah, that's one of those things where uh, like after the third school shooting,
yeah,
when schools are the biggest target,
yeah,
like, can we not fix that part of it?
yeah, yeah,
It was a point where I taught it. I mean, when you teach at colleges and things like that,
yeah,
you get taught about Columbine, right?
yeah.
You get
Yeah.
taught about active shooters. Like, I don't. You guys don't do active shooter drills. They are
We do. They not
really
really active shooter, but they do drills in terms of if there's a threat, but not necessarily
okay.
like an active shooter. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah. See,
mm,
so when we were kids, we had fire drills where they take you outside.
mm,
We had tornado drills,
yeah,
which in hindsight we would have all just died from the tornado, because
yeah,
there was no they weren't protecting us in any kind of way.
yeah,
They were
yeah,
just keeping us inside. And then but like my kids now and things like that, and kids now they do active shooter drills, which that's
right.
completely unnecessary, right?
Yeah,
Like, what do you get in the closet and hide? They taught us, as teachers that you either hide or you fight, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And I'm just like, why is this my job? right?
yeah,
I'm supposed to be teaching people. Like
yeah,
I don't want to have to murder somebody with the scissors on my desk, right? Like it's not a that's not what I signed up for. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
if that's what it takes, but like why?
yeah,
And so like and the fact that like they can't even breach the thought of it,
yeah,
and their whole like argument for good guys with guns, and then like what it was a couple of years ago where they let the guy sit in the room for an hour
yeah,
before they ever went after him, like
yeah, yeah. I know.
that's it. Pick a lane. Either you're
Yeah,
going to be the hero that kicks the door in,
yeah,
right? Or we're going to take all of the things. We're going to try to stop people from having the things in the first place. But you can't do neither, right? Like you can't
yes,
say one and not do all of them.
yeah, yeah,
Like my dad. Like I said, my dad he was a gun fanatic. I don't know how many
yeah,
guns he had. But he taught us, there's only one reason to have a gun, and it's if you got to kill somebody with it.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's not a toy, it's not something you play
No,
with, right?
yeah,
It's meant to do one thing.
yeah,
And so like way back in the 1970s,
yeah,
and he used to tell me this story all the time, so I'm going to share it for him.
yeah,
There was a there's a guy in the Howard Johnson Hotel in New Orleans. He was he got up in like the 50th floor with a sniper rifle, and he was
yeah.
just picking people off.
Right.
That was at the same time my dad
Yeah,
told me at least about that because he
yeah,
was one of the crime scene photographers that was there, right? Like,
yeah,
so he
right.
took pictures of it after it was over. And I had talked
Yeah,
to him about that and just like how crazy all of that was.
yeah,
And just like what a it was a 50 caliber rifle if I remember correctly. Like
yeah,
it was
yeah,
not a toy.
yeah,
Um,
right.
but like when something like that happens in the 70s,
Yeah,
right? And then it just kind of continues. At
yeah,
what point do you say, okay, this is enough?
yeah.
Like why can 18-year olds can't even go buy booze, but they can go buy an
Yeah.
assault rifle?
All
It's a
right.
lot
Yeah,
harder to
you're
kill
right. Yeah,
somebody when you're drunk. It's a lot harder to drink yourself and kill
yeah,
somebody in a car than it is to grab a gun and shoot somebody.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and 18 years old is not a especially 18-year-old boys are not mentally stable. I don't
no,
care who you are.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
there's
agree.
too
I
many
agree
hormones
with
going
you.
on.
I've never understood the gun culture thing. I mean, I do understand it because it sort of
Yeah,
goes back to the original, days. But
yeah,
it's still like it's like there's something about America where if it's in the Constitution or it's this, you can't. It's impossible to change, even if the circumstances change. Like I can
yeah,
see,
yeah,
I can see
yeah,
why people in the early days when they the independence and all that, and they were like they didn't trust the government and the difference
yeah,
between a citizen having a gun and the military, you could probably fight the military. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's probably,
yes,
you know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
so it made sense to some degree because there was some, if you get enough people
We were,
with enough guns, you could overthrow the government. But you're not going to be
yeah,
able to do that with a modern day military in America. So,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah,
No, no.
yeah,
All the revolutionary people, all the
yeah,
revolutionaries. I don't know.
yeah,
The colonizers. They it was all guerrilla warfare. They had to have guns
yeah.
because
That's right.
they were
Yeah,
attacking people as they were going by. They weren't trying
yeah,
to meet the British on a field because they knew they were going to lose. There
yeah,
wasn't enough of them. I mean, that's exactly what Vietnam did to us. Like we
yeah,
should have known we were never going to win.
yeah. Exactly.
In the
Yeah,
60s or whenever that was, because it was the
yeah,
same thing. They just did whatever we did.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it worked. We got out of
yeah,
there. The British left, and we left Vietnam. Like
yeah,
it's the Afghanistan. It's the same thing. It's a you can't lose because they're always there.
yeah,
Like, and you don't know who it is.
yeah,
It's unless you vaporize the place and all the people, which is usually impossible.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that was, and so we had to have guns. That's why it's number two, right? You
yeah.
can say whatever you want, and then you got to have a gun.
You got
Um, yeah, and then I forget what number three and four are. Three and four, one's about harboring,
yeah,
people in your house. Like it's all about the war. Like
yeah,
and like somehow it's still interpretable 250 years
yeah.
later to
I mean,
mean
it's just crazy.
exactly
Like,
what I want it to mean. Like,
if anybody
was that?
questions it, it's like, oh
Yeah,
no, you're a traitor
yeah,
or un-American or something. It's like,
yeah.
we can you can change with times. The modern
Yeah,
times.
we can update things, with the internet and calculators and
That's
it's
why I
like
think I like Australia because we don't
pens.
have this like constitution thing that we have to stick by. Do you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah,
don't, we're malleable. We can go, okay, well, 225 is a bit different to 1700. So, let's
Yeah,
try, let's try using like the internet. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if
yeah,
we still did medicine the same way, we'd be attaching leeches to each other.
exactly.
You know,
Well,
everything
I mean,
else
that,
changed.
that could be coming back, correct? That could be
Oh
coming
yeah,
back.
apparently so. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna suggest it to RFK until he thinks it's a good idea. All
yeah,
right,
I
just
think that's good.
bust out the leeches again. Used to work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's maybe asbestos, bring that back,
Yeah,
that'd
yeah,
be good,
yeah.
and something else. So Craig, I've got to get going because I'm actually
Oh,
moving home. Not
oh wow.
today, but in
Well,
about
good.
a week. So
Good luck with that.
we gotta do a lot of packing.
Oh,
So,
I understand.
yeah.
I do want
But
to tell you one more thing.
go
Remember
for
I
it.
said
Yeah.
this the Spanish flu, right? I
Yeah.
was like, I think Australia, you guys, and I googled this because I was trying to see,
Yeah.
but it says Australian states had a death toll of like 12,000. Like y'all kept it mostly out of the population.
Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
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 yeah. I thought that was the case, but I couldn't remember if it was the
yeah,
same for the same
yeah.
reason.
And
Um,
also back then there wasn't a lot of traveling. People were flying in and
yeah,
out every day, you know what I mean? So
yes,
it's been
yeah.
it
Nobody wanted to
it
go
definitely
to
helps to
Australia all the time.
yeah, it definitely helps to be on an island, and back then as well, because people,
Yeah,
geographically, Australia's really big, but there's only 27 million people here. So
yeah,
in the Spanish flu days, there would have been, I don't know, 8 million
yeah,
people here. So, and it
yeah.
was spread out. So, that an island, it's probably a good place to be during a flu thing like
Yeah,
that. So,
because and the flu, yeah,
yeah,
spread out is the key there too, because the flu couldn't
yeah, that's it. That's the word.
that flu kills too
So,
fast. It couldn't
yeah.
get very far. Anyway, yes, go move. Have like that is that's no fun. I did that not too long ago.
No, I'm actually not. I'm
Ha
actually not looking forward I hate moving actually, but we got to
yeah,
do it.
that's pain. Yeah,
um,
yeah. Well, it
so
was great talking to you. Like,
yeah, it was great talking to you. And I just want everyone who's listening to subscribe to Craig Christ, PhD. So I'll
yep,
when I post this, I'll put all your details on there as well, so people can
sounds
subscribe to
great.
you.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, because I love your newsletter. You
Oh,
write
thanks.
great.
Yeah,
I love your notes
yeah,
and all that stuff as well. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I just when something comes to me, I just write it down.
yeah. Well, I love it. Let's talk again. I'd love to chat again. Yeah, yeah,
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, this is fun.
yeah. Thanks, Craig. Talk to you soon.
All
Take
right.
it easy.
All right. You have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.